I woke up to the smell of smoke, thick, acrid, and suffocating. By the time I grabbed my shotgun and rushed outside, my barn was already an inferno. The flames lit the night sky, and for a second, all I could do was watch as everything I had built turned to ash. But what sent a chill down my spine wasn't just the destruction. It was the unmistakable, searing streaks left behind. This wasn't an accident. This was arson. And not just any arson. Someone had used a flamethrower. The HOA had been making my life hell for months, but now they'd crossed a line. Too bad for them. I'm not just some helpless homeowner. I'm a federal investigator. And they just declared war on the wrong man. I woke up choking. Thick, acrid smoke filled my bedroom, stinging my eyes and burning my throat. My lungs screamed for fresh air as I bolted upright, heart pounding like a war drum. The air was heavy, suffocating. Something was wrong, badly wrong. I stumbled out of bed, coughing hard, and yanked open my window. That's when I saw it. Flames. Bright. Searing flames tore through the night sky, an angry orange glow licking upward like the devil's own hand. And it wasn't just any fire, it was my barn. For half a second, I froze. My mind refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. The barn wasn't just on fire, it was an inferno, burning too fast, too hot. Something inside me twisted deep and cold. This wasn't an accident. I didn't waste time throwing on a shirt. I grabbed my boots, shoved my feet into them, and sprinted outside, barefoot on the frozen dirt. The closer I got, the worse it was. The heat blasted against my face, turning the cool night air into a furnace. Sparks rained down like hellfire, the roof already collapsing inward. My barn, my equipment, my work, gone. I ran toward it anyway, instinct driving me forward. Maybe, just maybe, I could save something. But as soon as I got within 10 feet, a sudden explosion rocked the ground beneath me. The force sent me stumbling back, shielding my face as a fireball burst from inside, lighting up the night. The heat was unbearable now, my skin stinging just standing there. It wasn't just with burning. Something had been planted in there, something designed to destroy. I knew fire. I had seen my share of arson cases before. But this was too precise, too aggressive. Someone had wanted total destruction, and they got it. The sound of sirens cut through the crackling flames. The fire department finally arrived, but even from where I stood, I could tell they weren't in a hurry. I turned, breath still ragged, as 2 fire trucks pulled up. The firefighters moved slower than they should have, taking their time unraveling the hoses. Something in my gut twisted again. Why weren't they acting like this was an emergency? A part of me already knew the answer before the question had even fully formed. Then, I heard the smooth hum of an expensive engine. A sleek, black luxury car rolled up behind the fire trucks, headlights cutting through the smoky air. And she stepped out, Miranda Caldwell, the Homeowners Association president. She was the kind of woman who looked like she belonged in a corporate boardroom, not the middle of a burning farm at 2 a.m. Perfectly tailored navy blue suit. Blonde hair styled so precisely it hadn't moved an inch despite the chaos around us. And worst of all, that smile. She walked toward me with that fake concern stretched across her face, heels clicking against the pavement. If I hadn't been so furious, I would have laughed at the absurdity of it. My barn was still burning. Firefighters were pretending to try. And Miranda Caldwell? She looked like she had planned this moment down to the second. She stopped a few feet away, her arms crossed over her chest, studying me. Then, in a voice as smooth as silk, she said, "Such a shame. Perhaps this is a sign to move on?" A sign. Move on. I felt my fingers twitch into fists. She knew. I didn't have proof yet, but I didn't need it. She was enjoying this. She wanted me gone. And she was willing to burn my entire life down to make it happen. The morning air smelled like ash. The once proud barn was nothing more than a pile of smoldering ruins, its blackened beams jutting up like broken ribs from a corpse. Smoke still curled from the wreckage, carried off by the wind. I crouched down, running my fingers through the soot. The fire hadn't just burned, it had incinerated. Too fast, too hot, not a random fire, an intentional one. I traced the burn marks across the ground, my mind automatically piecing together the patterns. The destruction wasn't chaotic. It was deliberate. Fire had spread from specific points, meaning multiple ignition sources. Then, my fingers brushed against something metallic beneath the ash. I pulled it free, turning it over my hand. A piece of melted steel, scorched with streaks that weren't from natural combustion. The burn pattern was unmistakable, napalm or thermite accelerants. I had seen this kind of fire before, military grade, and in that moment I knew whoever did this didn't just want my barn gone. They wanted to make sure there was nothing left. A chill ran up my spine, but it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something cold, something angry. And then I heard it, the crunch of expensive heels on gravel. I didn't even need to turn around. I already knew who it was. Miranda Caldwell. I straightened up, brushing ash off my hands as she approached. She wasn't alone this time. Flanking her were two new faces, both oozing the same arrogance that dripped from Miranda herself. On her left stood Karen Albright, the HOA treasurer, a short, sharp-faced woman clutching a leather clipboard like it was a weapon. She had the nose of a bloodhound and the expression of someone who enjoyed ruining lives for fun. And then there was Nancy Torres, the so-called compliance officer. She was built like a tank, broad shoulders, stiff posture, the kind of presence that screamed military background. Her cold, watchful eyes flicked over my property like she was assessing a battlefield. They weren't here for small talk. Miranda stopped a few feet away, folding her arms. Her expression was sympathetic, but her eyes were mocking. "I understand these tragic losses can be difficult," she said smoothly. "Maybe you'd be happier somewhere else?" There it was, not even 24 hours after my barn was torched, and they were already circling like vultures. I kept my face neutral, rubbing my jaw as if I was actually considering it. Inside, I was already imagining how deep I'd have to bury them if they tried this again. "That's so," I muttered. "Well, funny thing, fire investigators haven't even started their report yet. And here you are, talking like the case is closed." Miranda's smile didn't waver. "Oh, we're just concerned, dear," she purred. "After all, with all these unfortunate incidents, you must be under an incredible amount of stress." "Unfortunate incidents?" I scoffed. "Lady, my barn was burned to the damn ground. That's not an incident. That's a crime." Nancy's lips twitched, like she was holding back a smirk. Karen, however, had no such restraint. She let out a fake sigh, flipping through pages on her clipboard with exaggerated slowness. "Yes, well, fire hazards are something we take very seriously in this community," she said, tapping a pen against the page. "And speaking of which, we notice a few discrepancies on your property." I clenched my jaw. "Here it comes. What discrepancies?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Karen's smile widened. "Oh, let's see." She squinted at her notes. "Your fence is 3 inches higher than the regulation limit. Your porch railing hasn't been repainted in over 2 years. And, oh dear, this is a big one. Your storage shed over there isn't compliant with HOA aesthetic guidelines." I followed her gaze. She was pointing at my garage. My garage, the one where I kept my classified government files. The one with security systems they didn't even know about. My fingers curled into fists. This wasn't about infractions. They were testing my reaction. Pushing. Seeing if I'd break. They weren't just trying to find me. They were trying to erase me. I took a slow breath, forcing my expression into one of calculated frustration. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, dragging a hand down my face. "I just lost my damn barn, and now you're talking about fence height?" Miranda placed a delicate hand on my shoulder, her touch light but suffocating. "Oh, darling, rules are rules," she said. I turned my head slowly, locking eyes with her. She didn't flinch. Good. She didn't realize she was already losing. I sighed heavily, pretending to concede defeat. All right, I grumbled. "Just give me some time to sort this mess out." Karen looked positively delighted. Nancy, however, didn't move. She was still watching me, like she could see past the act. Miranda's lips curved into a smug smile, as if she had already won. "That's all we ask," she said sweetly. I'll have the paperwork sent over by the end of the day. We'll need a prompt response, of course. She turned on her heel, gesturing for Karen and Nancy to follow. Karen was already whispering to herself, probably calculating how many fines she could rack up. Nancy? She lingered for a second longer. Then, just before walking away, she gave me a look, one that said, I know you're not what you seem. I watched them go, the three of them disappearing into their expensive black SUV. As soon as they were out of sight, my fake frustration melted away. Now I knew this wasn't an ordinary HOA power trip. They wanted me gone, and I was going to find out why. The trucks rolled in at noon. Not one, not two, 5 big, white HOA-marked vehicles, all loaded with clipboard-wielding inspectors who hopped out like they were storming a battlefield. At the front of the pack, Miranda Caldwell. Her navy blue suit was as crisp as ever, her heels clicking on the pavement like gunfire as she approached. Behind her, Karen Albright was already jotting down violations before she even looked at anything. Nancy Torres, however, she wasn't holding a clipboard. She was scanning the property like a soldier assessing an enemy camp. I crossed my arms, leaning against my truck as they fan out across my land, snapping pictures of my fence, my garage, my damn mailbox. I already knew how this was going to go. Ah, Mr. Graves, Miranda said sweetly, stopping just a few feet from me. I'm afraid we've run into a few concerns regarding your property. Her voice was honey-coated poison, each word dripping with the fake sympathy of a woman who already thought she had won. I forced a tired sigh, playing along. Let me guess, more discrepancies? Oh, just a few, she beamed. This fence? Too high. That shed? Unauthorized structure. And my goodness, these power lines. She'd scared, shaking her head. Major fire hazard. I clenched my jaw. She was standing on the ashes of my burned barn and talking about fire hazards. Karen grinned, flipping to a fresh page on her clipboard. Now, obviously, these violations come with penalties, but we can negotiate. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I watched Nancy. She was circling my garage, running a hand along the frame, studying it with that same intense focus as before. Not like an inspector, like a soldier on a mission. Then she muttered under her breath, a single phrase. Damn shame, really. The last guy didn't have a choice, either. My blood ran cold. The last guy, not the last violation, not the last complaint. The last guy. This wasn't about HOA regulations. This was something bigger. I straightened up, keeping my expression neutral, but inside, something clicked. They had done this before. And if I didn't do something fast, I was next. That night I worked. I installed hidden surveillance cameras around the property, inside the garage, under the eaves of the house. Angles they wouldn't expect, because I knew what was coming. They had already burned my barn. Next, they were going to come back. And this time, I was going to catch them. It happened at 2 a.m. I woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside my window. I didn't turn on the lights, didn't move fast. Instead, I reached for the baseball bat beside my bed, stood up slowly and crept toward the window. Through the shadows, I saw him, a masked figure, dressed in dark clothes, moving low and careful, heading straight for my porch. And he was carrying something, a small metal canister. My fist tightened around the bat. Accelerant. He was here to burn me out. I moved fast. I slipped out the back door, circling around the side of the house. Keeping to the shadows, the masked man knelt down, unscrewing the cap on the canister. That was all I needed. I lunged. The impact sent us both crashing onto the ground. The canister rolled away as he grunted in surprise, but I was already on top of him, slamming his wrist into the dirt until he dropped the lighter. He swung wildly, but I caught his arm and twisted. Crack! A choke scream. His wrist bent at a sickening angle. I pinned him down, my knee digging into his back, grabbing the mask and ripping it off. He was young, maybe early 20s, pale, scared shitless, not a professional. A pawn. Who sent you? I growled. No answer. I pressed harder, feeling him struggle beneath my weight. Who sent you? Finally, through gritted teeth, he rasped. She won't stop. His voice was hoarse, pain-laced. You're in the way. That was all he said before I knocked him out cold. I didn't sleep that night. After tying the guy up and making sure he wasn't waking up anytime soon, I had one goal: find out exactly who the hell I was dealing with. I started with Miranda Caldwell. I pulled every federal database I still had access to, dug through tax records, property deals, lawsuits, anything that left a paper trail. And that's when I found it. Miranda Caldwell wasn't just an HOA president. She was the CEO of a shell company that had been involved in at least 3 major real estate fraud cases, all of which had one thing in common. They started with unfortunate accidents. A fire here, a demolition dispute there, families pushed out, property seized by the HOA. Then, months later, sold to private investors for triple price. Jesus, she had been running the scam for years. I kept digging. Karen Albright, former lawyer, specialized in title transfers, contracts, and legal loopholes, had a nasty habit of making problems disappear. Then, 6 years ago, she vanished. Not a trace of her in any bar association records after 2018. Just poof, gone. Until she popped up again as a treasurer for Miranda's HOA. And then there was Nancy Torres. Military background, honorable service, until she wasn't. A dishonorable discharge in 2019. The files were heavily redacted, but I pulled what I could. She was involved in an unauthorized operation. Something off the books. Something bad. That's when the pieces started fitting together. Miranda was a mastermind, the one who set up the scam, who used HOA laws like a weapon to force people out. Karen was the fixer, the legal expert, the one who made sure the paperwork was airtight. And Nancy? She was a muscle, the enforcer, the one they sent when fines and lawsuits weren't enough. I stared at my screen, my hands clenched into fists. They had been doing this for years. And now, they were trying to do it to me. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Because what I found next, that was the real bombshell. I ran a separate search on my own land. At first, there wasn't much. Some old farm records, zoning permits. Nothing unusual. But then I checked federal land contracts. And that's when I found it. A classified government contract, dated back to 1976. My land had once been a military storage site. Something was buried here. Something the government had tried to erase. And Miranda? She knew. That's why she wanted me gone. Not just because I was in the way, but because I might find something they didn't want found. A chill crawled up my spine. I needed proof. I pulled up my surveillance footage from last night. The cameras I had set up to catch anything suspicious. But when I clicked play, nothing. The files were gone. Wiped clean. My stomach turned. Someone had been here. Someone had erased my cameras remotely. And just as I was processing that, I heard a car pull up outside. The tires crunched against the gravel outside my house. I didn't move, didn't react. Just stayed by the window, watching as a sleek black Mercedes rolled to a stop at the edge of my porch. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped Miranda Caldwell. She didn't rush. She took her time, brushing a speck of dust from her pristine navy blue suit, her heels clicking against the ground as she walked toward my house. She wasn't here to argue. She thought this was already over. I stepped onto the porch, arms crossed. Her smile was polite, empty, like a hunter approaching an animal that didn't know it was already caught. She didn't speak, didn't waste time pretending to care. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Carefully, deliberately, she placed it on the wooden railing between us. Then she looked me right in the eye. Her voice was calm. Even, "You seem like a reasonable man, Mr. Graves." I said nothing, and I'm sure by now you understand that this situation you found yourself in. She tilted her head. "It's not a fight you can win." I glanced at the envelope but didn't touch it. She smiled. "Take the offer," she said. "Sell the property. Move on. No one has to get hurt." I didn't flinch. "And if I don't?" She let out a soft sigh, like a mother disappointed in a child. "Then things become unpleasant." She turned on her heel, her heels clicking against the pavement as she walked back to her car. No threats, no shouting, just a finality in her tone that told me she had already decided how this ended. The Mercedes pulled away, disappearing into the night. I waited until the taillights were gone before opening the envelope. Inside, a contract to sell my land. And taped to the last page, a single bullet. Attached to it was a handwritten note. The next one won't be a warning. I stared at it for a long time. Then slowly I smiled. Miranda thought she was closing the book on me. She had no idea. I was already set in my trap. I packed my truck the next morning. Made a show of it, too. Dragged suitcases out onto the porch. Tossed a duffel bag into the passenger seat. Left a for sale sign Miranda's people had planted in my yard right where it was. Then, right before noon, I drove off. At least, that's what they thought. In reality, I took a long detour through town, looped around the back roads, and parked my truck a few miles away in an abandoned lot. Then I walked back home to the woods, keeping off the main roads. I wasn't leaving. I was waiting, because I knew Miranda. I knew people like her. She wouldn't wait for the ink to dry on my fake sale. The second she thought I was gone, she'd send her people in, not to inspect, not to negotiate, to finish the job. So I spent the rest of the afternoon rigging my property. Hidden motion-triggered cameras covered the driveway and porch. Silent alarms lined the perimeter. My tool shed? Let's just say I redecorated. A few well-placed nails and wires would make any trespasser's life hell. And then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. It was past midnight when I heard them. Footsteps. Multiple. They weren't being careful. They thought I was gone. Through my hidden cameras, I saw them fanning out across the yard. Nancy, dressed in dark tactical gear, was heading straight for my garage, probably to inspect it with a crowbar. Karen was with her, muttering into her phone. Miranda wasn't there. Not yet. I let them get comfortable. Let them think they had the upper hand. Then I made my move. Nancy was the first to go down. She had just started prying at my garage lock when I dropped down from the roof. She barely had time to turn before I hit her. Hard. We went down in a heap, her breath exploding out in a grunt as my knee pressed into her back. She twisted, trying to throw me off, but I was faster, ex-military or not. She wasn't ready for me. Her arm swung for my ribs. I caught it and yanked. Crack. A strangled scream. Her wrist was done. She gasped, still struggling, but I grabbed the zip ties from her own damn belt and locked her arms behind her. One down. Karen saw what happened and ran. Smart, but not smart enough. Because my cameras? They caught everything. Her face. Her voice. Her license plate as she peeled out of my driveway. She might have escaped physically, but legally, she was already screwed. Miranda, however, she arrived right on schedule. Her Mercedes crept up my driveway nice and slow, headlights washing over the mess her people had made. She wasn't stupid. She already knew something had gone wrong. But still, she stepped out calm, collected, even when she saw Nancy zip-tied on my porch, writhing in pain. She tilted her head, studying me with mild curiosity. "I assume you feel proud of yourself," she mused. I didn't answer. "Not yet," she sighed, shaking her head. "You don't know who you're messing with." I smiled. "Neither do you." Then I pulled out my phone and pressed play. The recording from Karen's phone call. Nancy's confession before I knocked her out. The paper trail I had dug up. Her fraud, her past scams, her connections to organized crime. Miranda's face didn't change. But I saw it, the flicker in her eyes. The moment she realized she had finally lost. The morning air was crisp, peaceful, a perfect day for a raid. I stood on my porch, sipping my coffee as a convoy of black SUVs roared down the road toward town. FBI, federal agents, and inside those SUVs, the end of Miranda Caldwell. By the time I got to the HOA office, it was absolute chaos. Agents swarmed the building, hauling out boxes of files, hard drives, and stacks of forged documents. The front door had been kicked open, a few HOA employees standing outside, pale-faced and shaking. And in the middle of it all, Miranda. She wasn't calm anymore. She wasn't smirking. She was screaming. Her perfect suit was rumpled, her hair a mess, and her wrists locked in steel handcuffs. She thrashed as the agents pulled her toward the SUVs. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am?" One of the agents, a man I had worked with before, just shoved her head down into the back seat. "Yeah, that's why you're under arrest." I made sure she saw me as they dragged her away, and when our eyes met, I smiled. She lunged against her cuffs, pure hatred on her face. "You think this is over? You think this is over?" The door slammed shut, cutting off her voice. It was over. The news hit hard. HOA President arrested in arson and real estate scandal. Every news station ran it. Photos of Miranda being dragged away in cuffs. A breakdown of her entire scam. How she and her board use intimidation, fraud, and even arson to push homeowners out. Her assets? Frozen. Her reputation? Destroyed. And Karen? She folded instantly. Didn't even try to fight it. Threw Miranda under the bus so fast. I almost felt bad. Almost. As for Nancy, she vanished. No bank activity. No phone signals. But that didn't matter. Because I'd already sent her entire file. Her military record, her involvement, her last known locations, to every single law enforcement agency in the country. Wherever she was, she wouldn't be free for long. Justice had been served. And me, I still had my land, my home, and a warning to anyone who ever thought about coming for me again. This wasn't just my property. This was my war zone. And I had won. The barn stood tall again. Fresh wood, reinforced beams. A security system that would make Fort Knox jealous. It had taken weeks, but I had rebuilt what they tried to take from me. My land was mine again. My home was safe. Or so I thought. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the trees, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in my gut told me to look. I swiped open the message. Just one line. "You took out the pawns. But the real players are still watching." A slow chill crept up my spine. I scanned the tree line, the horizon, the road beyond my gate. Nothing, but I could feel it. Eyes. Somewhere, someone was watching. I locked my phone, slipping it into my pocket. Then I turned back to my land. My home. They thought this was over. They thought I'd be scared. They were wrong. They wanted a war. They got one.